Hello, my friends. It's Indiana Holmes, and it is story time again tonight. Tonight, we read the classic Grimm's fairy tale, Rumpelstiltskin. By the side of a wood, in a country a long way off, ran a fine stream of water, and upon the stream there stood a mill, the miller's house, which was close by. And the miller, you must know, had a very beautiful daughter. She was, moreover, very shrewd and clever, and the miller was so proud of her that he one day told the king of the land, who used to come and hunt in the wood, that his daughter could spin gold out of straw. Now the king was very fond of money, and when he heard the miller's boast of greediness, was raised, and he sent for the girl to be brought before him. Then he led her to a chamber in his palace, where there was a great heap of straw, and gave her a spinning wheel, and said, "All this must be spun into gold before morning, as you love your life." It was in vain that the poor maiden said that it was only a silly boast of her father, for that she could do no such thing as spin straw into gold. The chamber door was locked, and she was left alone. She sat down in one corner of the room and began to bewail her hard fate, when on a sudden door opened, and a droll-looking little man hobbled in and said, "Good morrow to you, my good lass. What are you weeping for?" "Alas," said she, "I must spin this straw into gold, and I know not how." "What will you give me," said the hobgoblin, "to do it for you?" "My necklace," replied the maiden. He took her at her word, and sat himself down to the wheel, and whistled and sang, "Round about, lo and behold, reel away, straw into gold." And round about the wheel went merrily, and the work was quickly done, and the straw was all spun into gold. When the king came and saw this, he was greatly astonished and pleased, but his heart grew still more greedy of gain, and he shut up the poor miller's daughter again with a fresh task. Then she knew not what to do, and sat down once more to weep. But the dwarf soon opened the door and said, "What will you give me to do your task?" "The ring on my finger," said she. So her little friend took the ring, and began to work at the wheel again, and whistled and sang, round about, lo and behold, reel away, straw into gold." Till long before morning all was done again. The king was greatly delighted to see all this glittering treasure, but still he had not enough. So he took the miller's daughter to yet a larger heap, and said, "All this must be spun tonight, and if it is, you shall be my queen." As soon as she was alone, that dwarf came in and said, "What will you give me to spin gold for you this third time?" "I have nothing left," said she. "Then say you will give me," said the little man, "the first little child that you may have when you are queen." "That may never be," thought the miller's daughter, and as she knew no other way to get her task done, she said she would do what he asked. Round went the wheel again to the old song, and the mannikin once more spun heap into gold. The king came in the morning, and finding all he wanted, was forced to keep his word. So he married the miller's daughter, and she really became queen. At the birth of her first child, she was very glad, and forgot the dwarf and what she had said. But one day he came into her room, where she was sitting and playing with her baby, and he put her in mind of it. Then she grieved sorely at his misfortune, that is, at her misfortune, and said she would give him all the wealth of the kingdom if he would let her off, but in vain, till at last her tears softened him, and he said, I will give you 3 days' grace, and if during that time you can tell me my name, you shall keep your child. Now the queen lay awake all night thinking of all the odd names that she had ever heard, and she sent messengers all over the land to find out new ones. The next day the little man came, and she began with Timothy, Ichabod, Benjamin, Jeremiah, and all the names she could remember. But to all and each of them he said, Madam, that is not my name. The second day she began with the comical names she could hear of, Bandylegs, Hunchback, Crookshanks, and so on. But the little gentleman still said to every one of them, Madam, that is not my name. The third day one of the messengers came back and said, I have traveled 2 days without hearing of any other names. But yesterday, as I was climbing a high hill among the trees of the forest, where the fox and the hare bid each other good night, I saw a little hut, and before the hut burnt a fire, and round about the fire a funny little dwarf was dancing upon one leg, singing, Merrily the feast I'll make, today I'll brew, tomorrow I'll bake. Merrily I'll dance and sing, for next day will a stranger bring. Little does my lady dream, Rumpelstiltskin is my name. When the queen heard this, she jumped for joy, and as soon as her little friend came, she sat down upon her throne and called all her court round to enjoy the fun. And the nurse stood by her side with the baby in her arms, as if it was quite ready to be given up. Then the little man began to chuckle at the thought of having the poor child to take home with him to his little hut in the woods, and he cried out, Now, lady, what is my name? Is it John? She asked. No, madam. Is it Tom? No, madam. Is it Jimmy? It is not. Can your name be Rumpelstiltskin? Said the lady shyly and slyly. Some witch told you that. Some witch told you that, cried the little man, and dashed his right foot in a rage so deep into the floor that he was forced to lay hold of it with both hands to pull it out. Then he made the best of his way off, while the nurse laughed and the baby crowed, and all the court jeered at him for having had so much trouble for nothing, and said, We wish you a very good morning and a merry feast, Mr. Rumpelstiltskin. And that, my friends, is the story of Rumpelstiltskin, and the end of another story time with Indiana Homes. Good night and love to you all. Hello, my friends. It's that time again, story time with Indiana Homes, and tonight we continue Bram Stoker's Dracula. Tonight's reading is chapter 25, and so we begin. Dr. Seward's Diary, October 11th, evening. Jonathan Harker has asked me to note this, as he says he is hardly equal to the task, and he wants an exact record kept. I think that none of us were surprised when we were asked to see Mrs. Harker a little before the time of sunset. We have, of late, come to understand that sunrise and sunset are to her times of particular freedom, when her old self can be manifest without any controlling force subduing or restraining her, or inciting her to action. This mood or condition begins some half hour or more before actual sunrise or sunset, and lasts till either the sun is high or whilst the clouds still aglow with the rays streaming above the horizon. At first, there is a sort of negative condition, as if some tie loosened, and then the absolute freedom quickly. When, however, the freedom ceases, the change back or relapse comes quickly, preceded only by a spell of warning silence. Tonight, when we met, she was somewhat constrained and bore all the signs of an internal struggle. I put it down myself to her making a violent effort at the earliest instant she could do so. A very few minutes, however, gave her complete control of herself. Then, motioning her husband, band to sit beside her on the sofa where she was half reclining, she made the rest of us bring chairs up close. Taking her husband's hand in hers, she began. We are all here together in freedom, for perhaps the last time. I know, dear, I know that you will always be with me to the end. This was to her husband, whose hand had, as we could see, tightened upon hers. In the morning, we go out upon our task, and God alone knows what may be in store for us. You are going to be so good to me as to take me with you. I know that all that brave, earnest men can do for a poor, weak woman whose soul perhaps is lost. No, not yet, but it is at any rate at stake. You will do. But you must remember that I am not as you are. There is a poison in my blood, in my soul, which may destroy me, which must destroy me, unless some relief comes to us. Oh, my friends, you know as well as I do that my soul is at stake, and though I know there is one way out for me, you must not, and I must not take it. She looked appealingly to us all in turn, beginning and ending with her husband. What is that way? Asked Dr. Van Helsing in a coarse voice. What is that way which we must not, may not take? That I may die now, either by my own hand or of that of another, before the greater evil is entirely wrought. I know, and you know, that were I once dead, you could and would set free my immortal soul, even as you did my poor Lucy's. Were death or fear of death the only thing that stood in the way, I would not shrink to die here, now, amidst the friends who love me. But death is not all. I cannot believe that to die is such a case, when there is hope before us and a bitter task to be done, is God's will. Therefore I, on my part, give up here the certainty of eternal rest, and go out into the dark where may be the blackest things that the world or the nether world holds. We were all silent, for we all knew instinctively that this was only a prelude. The faces of the others were set, and Harker's grew ashen gray. Perhaps he guessed better than any of us what was coming. She continued, This is what I can give into the hotchpot. I could not but note the quaint legal phrase which she used in such a place. And with all seriousness, what will each of you give? Your lives, I know. She went on quickly. That is easy for brave men. Your lives are God's, and you can give them back to him. But what will you give to me? She looked again questioningly, but this time avoided her husband's face. Quincy seemed to understand. He nodded, and her face lit up. Then I shall tell you plainly what I want. for there must be no doubtful matter in this connection between us now. You must promise me, one and all, even you, my husband, my beloved husband, that should the time come, you will kill me. What is the matter of that time? The voice was Quincy's, but it was low and strained. When you shall be convinced that I am so changed that it is better I die that I may live. When I am thus dead in the flesh, then you will, without a moment's delay, drive a stake through me and cut off my head, or do whatever else may be wanting to give me rest. Quincy was the first to rise after the pause. He knelt down before her and, taking her hand in his, said solemnly, I'm only a rough fellow who hasn't perhaps lived as a man should to win such a distinction, but I swear to you by all that I hold sacred and that I hold dear, that should the time come, should the time come, I shall not flinch from the duty that you have set upon us. And I promise you, too, that I shall make all certain, for if I am only doubtful, I shall take it. That time has come. My true friend was all she could say amid her fast-falling tears, as, bending over, she kissed his hand. I shall swear the same, my dear Madam Mina, said Dr. Van Helsing. And I, said Lord Godalming, each of them in turn kneeling to her to take the oath. I followed myself. Then her husband turned to her, wan-eyed and with a greenish pallor, which subdued his snowy whiteness of his hair, and asked, And must I, too, make such a promise, O my wife? You too, my dearest, she said, with infinite yearning of pity in her voice and eyes. You must not shrink. You are nearest and dearest and all the world to me. Our souls are knit into one for all life and all time. Think, dear, that there have been times when brave men have killed their wives and their womankind to keep them from falling into the hands of the enemy. Their hands did not falter any move the more because those that they loved implored them to slay them. It is men's duty towards those whom they love in such times of sore trial. And, oh, my dear, if it is to be that I must meet death at any hand, let it be at the hand of him that loves me best. Dr. Van Helsing, I have not forgotten your mercy in poor Lucy's case to him who loved. She stopped with a flying blush and changed her phrase, to him who have had best right to give her peace. If that time shall come again, I look to you to make it a happy memory of my husband's life, that it was his loving hand which set me free from the awful thrall upon me. Again, I swear, came the professor's resonant voice from Mrs. Harker, and Mrs. Harker smiled upon him, positively smiled, as with a sigh of relief she leaned back and said, And now one word of warning, a warning which you must never forget this time, if it ever comes. May it come quickly and unexpectedly. In such case, you must lose no time in using your opportunity, as such a time I myself might be, nay, if the time ever comes, shall be leagued with your enemy against you. One more request. She became very solemn and said this: "It is not vital and not necessary like the other, but I want you to do one thing for me, if you will." We all acquiesced, but no one spoke. There was no need to speak. "I want you to read the burial service." She was interrupted by a groan deep from her husband. Taking from his hand in hers, she held it over his heart and her heart and continued, "You must read it over me some day. Whatever may be the issue of all this fearful state of things, it will be a sweet thought to all or some of us. You, my dearest, will, I hope, read it, for then it will be your voice in my memory forever, come what may. But, oh, my dear one," he pleaded, "death is far off from you." "Nay," she said, holding up a warning hand, "I am deeper in death at this moment than if the weight of an earthly grave lay heavy upon me." "Oh, my wife, must I read it?" he said, before he began again. "It would comfort me, my husband," was all she said, and he began to read when she had got the book out. "How can how could anyone tell of the strange scene, its solemnity, its gloom, its sadness, its horror, its withdrawal and horror, and yet its sweetness? Even a skeptic who can see nothing but a travesty of bitter truth in anything holy or emotional would have been melted to the heart had he seen that little group of loving and devoted friends kneeling round that stricken and sorrowful lady, or heard the tender passion of her husband's voice, as in tones so broken with emotion that often he had to pause. He had read the simple and beautiful service from the burial of the dead, and I cannot go on. Words and a voice fail me. She was right in her instinct. Strange as it was, bizarre as it may have been hereafter seem even to us who felt its potent influence at the time, it's comforted as much. And the silence, which showed Mrs. Harker's coming relapse from her freedom of soul, did not seem so full of despair to any of us as we had dreaded. Jonathan Harker's Journal, October 15th. Varna. We left Charing Cross on the morning of the 12th, got to Paris the same night, and took the place and places secured for us in the Orient Express. We traveled the night and day, and arriving here in Varna at about 5 o'clock. Lord Godalming went to the consulate to see if any telegram had arrived for him, whilst the rest of us came on to this hotel, the Odysseus. The journey may have had incidents. I was, however, too eager to get on to care for them. Until the Tsarina Catherine comes into port, there will be no interest for me in anything in this wide world. Thank God, Mina is well and looks to be getting stronger. Her color is coming back. She sleeps a great deal. Throughout the journey, she slept nearly all the time. Before sunrise and sunset, however, she is very wakeful and alert, and it has become a habit for Van Helsing to hypnotize her at such times. At first, some effort was needed, and he had to make many passes, but now she seems to yield at once, as if by habit, and scarcely has any action, and none so seems to be needed. He seems to have power at these particular moments to simply will, and her thoughts obey him. He always asks her what she can see and hear, and she answers to the first, "Nothing. All is dark. And to the second, she answers, I can hear the waves lapping against the ship, the water rushing by, canvas and cordage strain, and masts and yards creak. The wind is high, I can hear it in the shrouds, and the bow throws back the foam. It is evident that the Tsarina Catherine is still at sea, hastening on her way to Varna. Lord Godalming has just returned. He had 4 telegrams, one each day since we started, and all to the same effect, that the Tsarina Catherine had not been in Varna to Lloyd's from anywhere. He had arranged before leaving London that his agent should send him every day a telegram saying if the ship had been reported. He was to have a message even if she were not reported, so that he might be sure that there was a watch being kept at the other end of the wire. We had dinner and went to bed early. Tomorrow we are to see Vice Consul and to arrange, if we can, about getting on board the ship as soon as she arrives. Van Helsing says that our chance will be to get on the boat between sunrise and sunset. The Count, even if he takes the form of a bat, cannot cross the running water of his own volition, and so cannot leave the ship, as he dare not change to man's form without suspicion, which he evidently wishes to avoid. He must remain in the box. If, then, we can come on board after sunrise, he is at our mercy, for we can open the box and make sure of him, as we did of poor Lucy before he wakes. What mercy he shall get from us will not count for much. We think that we shall not have much trouble with officials or the seamen. Thank God, this is the country where the bribery can do anything, and we are well supplied with money. We have only to make sure that the ship cannot come into port between sunset and sunrise without judgment, our being warned, and we shall be safe. Judge Moneybag will settle this case, I think. October 16th. Mina's report still the same. Lapping waves and rushing water, darkness and favoring winds. We are evidently in good time, and when we hear of the Tsarina Catherine, we shall be ready. As she must pass the Darnelles, we are sure to have some report. October 17th. Everything is pretty well fixed now. I think to welcome the Count on his return from his tour, Godalming told the shippers that he fancied that box sent aboard might contain something stolen from a friend of his, and got half consent that he might open it at his own risk. The owner gave him a paper telling the captain to give him every facility in doing whatever he chose on board the ship, and also a similar authorization to his agent at Varna. We have seen the agent, who has much impressed with Godalming's kindly manner to him, and we are all satisfied that whatever he can do to aid our wishes will be done. We have already arranged what is to be done to the case when we get to the box and open it. If the Count is there, Van Helsing and Seward will cut off his head at once and drive a stake through his heart. Morris and Godalming and I shall prevent interference, even if we have to use the arms which we shall have at the ready. The professor says that if we can so treat the Count's body, it will also soon after fall into dust. In such case, there would be no evidence against us, in case any suspicion of murder were aroused. But even if it were not, we should stand or fall by our act, and perhaps someday this very script may be evidence to come between some of us and a rope. For myself, I should take the chance, only too thankfully, if it were to come. We mean to leave no stone unturned to carry out our intent. We have arranged with certain officials that the instant the Tsarina Catherine is seen, we are to be informed by a special messenger. October 24th. A whole week of waiting. Daily telegrams to Godalming, but only the same story, not yet reported. Mina's morning and evenings hypnotic answer is unvaried. Lapping waves, rushing water, crackling masks. Telegram, October 24th. Rufus Smith, Lloyd's of London, to Lord Godalming, care of HBM Vice-Consul Varna. Tsarina Catherine, reported this morning from the Darnells. Dr. Seward's diary, October 25th. How I miss my phonograph. To write diary with a pen is irksome to me, but Van Helsing says I must. We were all wild with excitement yesterday when Godalming got his telegram from Lloyd's. I know now what men feel in battle when they are called to action. Mrs. Harker alone of our party did not show any signs of emotion. After all, it is not strange that she did not, for we took special care not to let her know anything about it, and we all tried not to show any excitement when we were in her presence. In old days she would, I'm sure, have noticed, no matter how we might have tried to conceal it. But in this way she is greatly changed. During the past 3 weeks, the lethargy grows upon her. And though she seems strong and well, and is getting back some of her color, Van Helsing and I are not satisfied. We talk of her often. We have not, however, said a word to her and to the others. It would break poor Harker's heart, certainly his nerve, if he knew that we had even a suspicion on the subject. Van Helsing examines, and he tells me her teeth very carefully whilst she is in the hypnotic condition, for he says that so long as they do not begin to sharpen, there is no active danger of a change in her. If this change should come, it would be necessary to take steps. We both know what those steps would be. Though we do not mention our thoughts to each other, we should neither of us shrink from the task, awful though it be to contemplate euthanasia. It be an excellent and comforting word. I am grateful to whoever invented it. It is only about 24 hours sail from the Dardanelles to here, at any rate. The Tsarina, the Katharina, has come from London. She should therefore arrive sometime in the morning, but she cannot possibly get in before then. We are all about to retire early. We shall get up at 1 o'clock as to be ready. October 25th, noon. No news yet of the ship's arrival. Mrs. Harker's hypnotic report this morning was the same as usual, so it is possible that we may get news at any moment. We men are all in a fever of excitement, except Harker, who is calm. His hands are cold as ice, and an hour ago I found him wetting the edge of the great Gouka knife, which he now carries with him. It will be a bad lookout for the Count if the edge of that kukri knife ever touches his throat, and driven by that stern, ice-cold hand. Van Helsing and I, a little alarmed about Mrs. Harker today. About noon, she got into a sort of lethargy, which we did not like. Although we kept silence to the others, we were neither of us happy about it. She had been restless all the morning, so that we were at first glad to know that she was sleeping. When, however, her husband mentioned casually that she was sleeping so soundly that he could not wake her, we went to her room to see for ourselves. She was breathing naturally and looked so well and peaceful that we agreed that the sleep was better for her than anything else. Poor girl, she was so much to forget that it is no wonder that sleep, if it brings oblivion to her, does her good. Later, our opinion was justified, for when after a refreshing sleep of some hours she woke up, we seemed brighter, though she seemed brighter and better than she had been for days. At sunset, she made the usual hypnotic report. Wherever he may be in the Black Sea, the Count is in a hurry, and he is hurrying to his destination, to his doom, I trust. October 25th. Another day and no tidings of the Tsarina Catherine. She ought to be here by now. That she is still journeying somewhere is apparent, for Mrs. Harker's hypnotic report at sea was still the same. It is possible that the vessel may be lying by, at times, for some fog, for some of the steamers which came in last evening reported patches of fog both to the north and to the south of the port. We must continue our watching, as the ship may now be signaling at any moment. October 27th, noon. Most strange. No news yet of the ship. We wait for Mrs. Harker. Reported last night and this morning, as usual, lapping waves and rushing water, though she added that the waves were very faint. The telegrams from London have been the same. No further report. Van Helsing is very terribly anxious, and told me just now he fears the Count is escaping us. He added significantly, I did not like that lethargy of Madam Mina's. Souls and memories can do strange things during a trance. I was about to ask him more, but Harker's just then came in, and he said, up and warning a hand, we must try tonight at sunset to make her speak more fully in her hypnotic state. Telegram, October 28th, Rufus Smith, London, to Lord Godalming, care of HBM Vice Consul, Varna. Tsarina Catherine reported entering Galetz at 1 o'clock today. Dr. Seward's diary, October 28th. When the telegram came announcing the arrival of Galetz, I do not think it was such a shock to any of us as might have been expected. True, we did not know whence or how or when the bolt would come, but I think we all expected that something strange would happen. The delay of arrival at Varna made us individually satisfied that things would not be just as we expected. We only waited to learn where the change would occur. None the less, however, was it a surprise. I suppose that nature works on such hopeful basis that we believe against ourselves that things will be as they ought to be, not as we should know they will be. Transcendentalism is a beacon to the angels, even if it be will or the wisp to man. It was an odd experience, and we all took it differently. Van Helsing raised his hand over his head for a moment, as though in remonstrance with the Almighty, but he said not a word, and in a few seconds stood up with his face sternly set. Lord Godalming grew very pale and sat breathing heavily. I was myself half stunned and looked in wonder at one after another. Quincey Morris tightened his belt with a quick movement, which I knew so well. In our old wandering days, it meant action. Mrs. Harker grew ghastly white, so that the scar on her forehead seemed to burn. But she folded her hands meekly and looked up in prayer. Harker smiled, actually smiled. The dark, bitter smile of one who is without hope, but at the same time, his action belied his words, for his hands instinctively sought the hilt of the great kukuri knife and rested there. "When does the next train start for Galetz?" said Van Helsing to us generally. "At 6:30 tomorrow morning." We all started, for the answer came from Mrs. Harker. "How long on earth do you know?" said Art. "You forget, or perhaps you do not know, though Jonathan does, and so does Dr. Van Helsing, that I am the train fiend." Dr. Van Helsing, that I am the train fiend. At home in Exeter, I always used to make up the timetables. So, as to be helpful to my husband, I found it useful sometimes that I would always make a study of the timetables now. I knew that if anything were to take us to Castle Dracula, we should go by Galetz, or at any rate, through Bucharest. So I learned the times very carefully. Unhappily, there are not many to learn, as the only train tomorrow leaves as I say. "Wonderful woman," murmured the professor. "Can't we get a special?" asked Lord Godalming. Van Helsing shook his head. "I fear not. This land is very different from yours and mine. Even if we did have a special, it would probably not arrive as soon as our regular train. Moreover, we have something to prepare. We must think. Now let us organize. You, friend Arthur, go to the train and get the tickets and arrange that all be ready for us to go in the morning. Do you, friend Jonathan, go to the agent of the ship and get him letters to the agent of Galatz with authority to make search of the ship. We must search that ship. Morris, Quincy Morris, you see the vice consul and get his aid with the fellow in Galetz and all he can do to make our way smooth, so that there are no time to be lost when over the Danube he arrives. John will stay with Madam Mina and me, and we shall consult, for so if time be long, you may be delayed, and it will not matter when the sun set, since I am here with Madam to make the report." "And I," said Mrs. Harker brightly, and more like her old self than she had been for many a long day, "shall try to be of use in some way, and shall think and write for you as I used to. Something is shifting from me in some strange way. I feel freer than I have been of late." The three younger men looked happier at that moment, as they seemed to realize the significance of her words. But Van Helsing and I turned to each other and met each with a grave and troubled glance. We said nothing at the time, however. When the three men had gone out to their tasks, Van Helsing asked Mrs. Harker to look up the copy of the diaries and find him the part of Harker's journal at the castle. She went away to get it, and when the door was shut upon it, he said to me, "We mean the same. Speak out. There is some change. It is a hope that makes me sick, for it may deceive us." "Quite so. Do you know why I asked her to get the manuscript?" "No," said I, "unless it was to get an opportunity of seeing me alone." "You are in part right, friend John, but only in part. I want to tell you something, and oh, my friend, I am taking a great, terrible risk, but I believe it is right. In the moment when Madam Mina said those words that arrest both our understandings and inspiration came to me. In the trance of 3 days ago, the Count sent her his spirit to read her mind, or more like he took her to see him in his earth box in the ship with water rushing, just as it go free at rise and set of sun. He learned then that we are here, For she has more to tell in her open life, with her eyes to see and hear and ears to hear, than he has to shut. As he is in his coffin box, now he makes his most efforts to escape us. At present, he wants her not. He is sure, with his soul, so great knowledge, that she will come at his call. But he's cut her off, taken her, as he can do, out of his mind's power, that she can come not with him. Ah, there I have hope that our man-brains, that have been of man so long, and that have not lost the grace of God, will come higher than his child-brain, that lie in his tomb for centuries, that grow not yet to our stature, and that do not work selfish, and therefore small. Here comes Madam Mina, not a word to her of her trance. She knows not of it, and it would overwhelm her and make her in despair, just when we want all her hope, all her courage, when most we want all her great brain, which is trained like a man's brain, but is sweet like a woman's, and has a special power which the Count gave her, and which he may not take away altogether, though he thinks he does. Hush, let me speak, and you shall learn. O John, my friend, we are in awful straits. I fear as I never feared before. We can only trust the good God. Silence, here she comes. I thought that the professor was going to break down and have hysterics, just as he had when Lucy died. But with great effort he controlled himself, and was at a perfect nervous poise when Mrs. Harker tripped into the room, bright and happy looking, and in doing of work, seemingly forgetful of her misery. As she came in, she handed a number of the sheets of typewritten to Dr. Van Helsing. He looked over them and gravely, his face brightening up as he read. Then, holding the pages between his fingers and thumb, he said, "Friend John, to you with this much of experience already, and you, too, dear Madam Mina, that are young, here is a lesson. Do not fear ever to think. A half thought has been buzzing often in my brain, but I fear to let him loose his wings. Here now, with more knowledge, I go back to where that half thought come from where I find to be no half thought at all, that to be a whole thought, though so young that he is not yet strong to use his little wings, nay, like the ugly duck of my friend Hans Andersen. He be no duck thought at all, but a big swan thought that sail nobly on big wings. When the time come for him to try them, see, I read here what Jonathan had written. That other of his race who, in a latter age, again and again, brought his forces over the great river into Turkey land, who, when he was beaten back, came again and again and again, though he had to come alone from the bloody field where his troops were being slaughtered, since he knew that he alone could ultimately triumph. What does all this tell us? Not much. No, the Count's child thought sees nothing, therefore he speaks so free. Your man thought sees nothing. My man thought sees nothing, till just now. No, but there comes another word from someone who speaks without thought, because she, too, knows not what it means, what it might mean. She, just as there are elements which rest, yet when in nature's course they move on their way, and they touch, then poof, and then there comes a flash of light, heaven wide, that blind and kill and destroy some, but that show up all earth below for leagues and leagues. It is not so. Well, I shall explain. To begin with, have you ever studied the philosophy of crime? Yes and no. You, John, yes, for it is a study of insanity. You, no, Madam Mina, for crime touch you not but once. Still your mind works true, and argues a particulari ad universale. There is this peculiarity in criminals. It is so constant in all countries and at all times, that even police who know not much from philosophy come to know it empirically. That is, that it is to be empiric. The criminal always works at one crime. That is the true criminal who seems predestined to crime, who will of none other. This criminal has not full man-brain. He is clever and cunning and resourceful, but be not of man's stature as to brain. He be of a child brain. Now this criminal of ours is predestinate to crime also. He too has a child's brain, and it is the child to do what he has done. The little bird, the little fish, the little animal learns not by principle, but empirically. And when he learns to do, then there is to him the ground to start from to do more. Das pou sto, said Archimedes. Give me a fulcrum, and I shall move the world. To do once is the fulcrum whereby the child brain becomes a man brain, and until he has the purpose to do more, he continues to do the same again every time, just as he has done before. Oh, my dear, I see your eyes are opened, and that you too are the lightning flash shown all the leagues. For Mrs. Harker began to clap her hands, and her eyes sparkled. He went on. Now you have, and I shall speak. I shall speak to tell to us both, to dry men of science, what you shall see with those so bright eyes. He took her hand and held it whilst she spoke. His finger and thumb closed on her on her pulse. As I thought instinctively and unconsciously as she spoke, the Count is a criminal of criminal type. Nordau and Lombroso would so classify himself, and qui criminal, he is of imperfectly formed mind. Thus, in a difficulty, he has to seek resource in habit. His past is a clue, and the one page of it that we know, and that from his own lips tells that once before, when in what Mr. Morris would call a tight place, he went back to his own country from the land he had tried to invade, and thence, without losing purpose, prepared himself for a new effort. He came again, better equipped for his work, and won. So he came to London to invade a new land. He was beaten, and when all hope of success was lost, and his existence in danger, he fled back over the sea to his home, just as formerly he had held back over the Danube from Turkeyland. Good, good. Oh, you so clever lady, said Van Helsing enthusiastically as he stooped and kissed her hand. A moment later he said to me, as calmly as though he had been having a sick room consultation, 72 only, And in all this excitement, I have hope. Turning to her again, he said with keen expectations, "But go on. Go on. There is more to tell if you will. Be not afraid, John, and I know. I do in any case, and shall tell you, if you are right, speak without fear. I will try to, but you will forgive me if I seem egotistical. Nay, fear not, you must be egotist, for it is of you that we think. Then, as he is criminal, he is selfish, and his intellect is small, and his action is based on selfishness. He confines himself to one purpose. That purpose is remorseless. As he fled back over the Danube, leaving his forces to be cut to pieces, he now is intent on being safe, careless of all. So his own selflessness frees my soul somewhat from the terrible power which he acquired over me on that dreadful night. I felt it. Oh, I felt it. Thank God for his great mercy. My soul is freer than it has been since that awful hour. And all that haunts me is freer, lest in some trance or dream he may have used my soul for his ends. The professor stood up. He has so used your mind, and by it he has left us here in Varna, whilst the ship that carried him rushed through enveloping fog to Galatz, where doubtless he had made preparation for escaping from us. But his child mind only saw so far, and it may be that, as ever in God's providence, the very thing that the evildoer must reckon on for his selfish good turns out to be his chiefest harm. The hunter is taken in his own snare, and the great psalmist says, "For now that he thinks he is free from every trace of us all, and that he has escaped us with so many hours to him, then his selfish child brain will whisper him to sleep. He thinks, too, that as he cut himself off from knowing your mind, there can be no knowledge of him to you. And there is where he fails. That terrible baptism of blood which he gave you makes you free to go to him in spirit, as you have as yet done in your times of freedom. When the sun rises, the sun does rise and then does set. At such times you go by your volition and not by his. And this power to good of you and others, as you have won from your suffering at his hand, this is now all the more precious that he knows not of it, and to guard himself has even cut himself off from his knowledge of where we are. We, however, are not selfish, and we believe that God is with us through all this blackness, and these many dark hours. We shall follow him, and we shall not flinch, even if we peril ourselves, that we become like him, friend John. This has been a great hour, and it has done much to advance us on our way. You must be the scribe and write him all down, so that when the others return from their work, you can give it to them, and they shall know, as we all now know too. And so I have written it whilst we wait their return, and Mrs. Harker has written with her typewriter all since she brought the MS to us." And that, my friends, is the end of chapter 25 of Dracula. Thank you all for being with me. This has been Indiana Holmes for another evening of story time. Good night and love to you all.
Please hit the like button, subscribe, and hit the notifications button. Thank you very much.